Hi there, this is Kayla Johnson, and this is my final project for ACTE 630. So I am using the collaborative tool called Explain Everything. It is sort of like an online whiteboard feature where you could have students collaborate in an online environment and kind of create like whiteboard slides for a presentation. So it's pretty cool, and I hope you enjoyed, and I actually really enjoyed using it. So the first slide that I have here is my philosophy of online teaching. So I said here that my philosophy is to foster a learner autonomy-centered atmosphere in which students use collaboration, active participation, and 21st century skills to become creative and innovative thinkers. I kept going back and reading through chapter 2 to the 5 outcomes that I listed here that are viewed as an effective instruction for online instruction located on page 27. So those revolved around the learner autonomy, active participation, collaboration and community building, authentic assessment, and acquisition of 21st century skills. So I kind of based my philosophy on 3 of those outcomes because those are the ones that I felt the most confident in that I could have online students do at the current moment. I also kept thinking back to Prensky's article about our digital natives and what students need from us in order to become engaged with online material. So no matter what age of the student, they have devices everywhere around them, and it's our job as educators to shift our mindsets so that we can use the devices to our advantage. All right, so just advance to the next slide here. So, my role in online teaching, I again went back to Rice's text, and I kind of felt like the most important part that I think I could fulfill would be the guide on the side. Just being that person who is the person that students can go to lean on and to guide them in the right direction. Not only them, but also I'm sure their parents probably need some help and guidance too. I would also be encouraged to use student engagement a lot. Again, go back to that Prensky article. He talks about student engagement. Not only student to teacher collaboration, but also student to student collaboration. This is something that even in my own personal classroom that I need to do a better job in having students talk to each other. Rather than me talking at them all the time, I think that they really benefit from hearing from each other. All right, so this is a brief overview of a unit that I might teach. So I would be interested in teaching number bonds online. Maybe kind of a long shot here, but I'm going for it. So students in first grade need to be able to compose and decompose numbers. It's a huge standard all the way up to 20. So making these fact families is extremely important. And I spent a lot of time teaching number bonds. So this is a number bond on the side here. You have a whole number, and then you have a part and another part. So essentially when you put it together, it would be 6 plus 4 equals 10, or 4 plus 6 equals 10. I also show students this way, and we also represent the commutative property of addition when we do it. And I don't actually tell them that it's the commutative property, but just so that they get the basic understanding of that is important. And then we also move into subtraction with the fact family. So I typically relate this to students when I'm actually using arms and their head. So what I do is, if I was teaching this online too, I would have to do this because I just think it's awesome. So I usually put like my one hand up and say like, this is a part, and then my other hand is another part, and then they funnel together to your head to make a whole. So we always do part, part, whole, and we just keep going through that back and forth. I like to do this because it just gets their brain and body moving and their blood pumping through their body. I like to involve these whole body movements just whenever I can. We even get up and dance. There's this guy online on YouTube, if you haven't heard of him. His name's Jack Hartman, and he's more so for elementary students, but he's hilarious. He does the alphabet and numbers and all kinds of stuff. So we would get up and move around as often as we could. So I believe in my traditional class setting, I would start by giving the students manipulatives to work with. So we would start by building a one part. So we put 6 manipulatives in this side, and actually I'll go to the next slide here. So here's I would give them a number bond mat, and they would put 6 here and 4 here, and then they would move them to the hole here to get 10. And it's just that physical movement of moving them from the part to the hole really helps to conceptualize what I'm doing in my number bond. I also like to make sure the number bond is facing a couple different ways, that the hole's over here, could be down here, or up here, just so that the students don't get used to just doing it one way. That can be really tricky if you just present some type of material in one way, in one direction, and then they're completely lost when you shift the number bond around. So like I said, I would start by giving them some practice. Well, first I would model. I would do something like this on my own where, say I would draw like, I would draw the 6 dots over here, and then I would draw 4 dots over here, and then I would show them how you bring them to the center, bring these to the center, and eventually it would make 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so something simple like that. I do that a couple different times, and then I would probably have the students practice on their own. When you start getting into harder problems, so I'm going to erase this quickly. So if I would want to give them a harder problem, say I would start with a hole, the whole number here, and one of the parts, then they would have to figure out the other parts. That really throws them. So we would also have to work on stuff like that. So if I were to do this in an online setting, what I would do is I would like to assign different pages. Like for this whiteboard, I would maybe add a couple more pages here, and then assign students to a page where they would have to go to the whiteboard and figure it out on their own. So that kind of would allow me to see each student and what they're doing in this type of online environment. I could also do that in collaborative pairs, so I'd have 2 students working on one whiteboard page. Yeah, I just think that it would be really cool. All right, so moving. All right, so describe your approach to integrating synchronous, asynchronous, and collaboration tools with specific examples and how they would fit into the unit that I would be teaching. So for synchronous, I would just facilitate my own lesson. The students would have to log in at a certain day and time, and they would have to complete the lesson practice problems that I assign. Again, going back to what I was saying about making this collaborative as possible, I would which kind of is explained down here too. I would give the groups certain pages, whiteboard pages, especially if I'm using this type of tool, that they would have to complete with a partner. And then I would be able to watch them and see how they complete the problems, and then I could even have them explain their answers or their partner's answers. For asynchronous, students would log in at their own time and listen and learn from a pre-recorded lesson. Not exactly sure how that would go, because I feel like that would take a lot of time on my end, a lot of extra time. But then again, I wouldn't have to sit on the computer and do the online synchronous lesson. The students could just complete it when they wanted to. So I'm not sure how I feel about pre-recording a lecture and then having students listen to it, especially since the grade level that I teach is so young. I feel like it would be more beneficial to have it as a synchronous lesson. And again, I kind of already hit on this, but with the collaboration, sending students to certain pages on Explain Everything, where they would be responsible for working in a group to solve problems and talk with each other about solving how they themselves would solve the problems. All right, so going to this page, some special consideration for management and assessment. So I looked at the textbook in Rice. I believe it was chapter 6 that we were assigned this week. So just some things that I would have to take into consideration are using a variety of forums. So I wouldn't always have to do a discussion page or like this whiteboard activity, just doing things differently, switching it up so that the students wouldn't get bored. Creating a private space where students can have individual communication. To me, that would be really important, because I wouldn't want everything to be out there on the internet where all peers and classmates could see it, especially if the student was having an issue. I would like if they could contact me one-on-one. Introducing topical threads, explaining netiquette. That is something huge that I would be like, I don't know, really hard on my students about netiquette and just making sure that they're not being rude, they're not talking out of turn. Thinking back to the videos that we watched previously, earlier on in the course, I just could not stand if I would have a live chat running on the side while students are kind of just messing around and putting in whatever they want, like that one guy, unfortunately. Using explicit instruction for discussion expectations, just making sure that students know that they would have to, if they're participating in a synchronous lesson, I would definitely need to hear from them. It would not be okay for them to just sit and not participate. Time management seems to be something on my mind that I think a lot about, not only in my own classroom, but how just to manage time online. I feel like I would really just have to make sure that I knew exactly how long it took me to get through a topic, and I feel like things could just really escalate quickly if a student started talking about something else, and you would get really off track and not be able to get back on track. So that would be something that would be really important for me. And I just said that, yeah. Careful not to get off topic. So for asynchronous, again, looking at RICE, preparing posts in advance, discussion posts especially, kind of just not thinking of them on the fly, but making sure that they are thoughtful and the students can respond to them in an appropriate manner. Monitoring participation and setting clear expectations. Since this is asynchronous, I would definitely have to make sure that I assigned a certain number of posts a week so that students were getting online and responding to one another. It's kind of boring if they're just responding to themselves or just responding to the post. So making sure that they're kind of you're developing them into a well-rounded student, so they're not just thinking about themselves, they're thinking about other people too. Again, making a minimum required number of posts just to encourage that participation, and I would also have to provide lots and lots of feedback because I feel like online it would be really hard to get that visual feedback, so especially with asynchronous, you're not requiring them to be online at a certain time. That would be important for me. Lastly, my aha moments. Okay, so I feel kind of bad, but I always had this stigma that online schooling was just for weird kids, and I'm really sad to say that and admit that. But after watching some of the videos earlier on in the course, I actually learned that students who have some health issues may be more suited to work in an online environment, and also students who are athletes who are constantly busy. I honestly just never had given that any thought. So that was definitely an aha moment. Time management. It takes a ton of time to make your lessons and develop them online. Another aha moment that all the online schools that are out there, there are so many, I don't even understand how one parent can choose one school that they want their child to go to. I'm sure that would be really difficult. Also, that students can break out into rooms to complete work. I just think that this is so cool that the students can go to their own space with their peers and communicate and collaborate with each other. And lastly, I just think that I was surprised at how online opens up so many possibilities for regular education teachers too. Like Liz had mentioned the other day in her introductory video about how if you're absent, you could actually make an online video and teach part of your lesson to the class. It's insane. I think it's so cool, the technology that we have available to us, and I definitely have changed my mindset towards online teaching, and I think it would be really cool to try it out someday. So thank you for listening. I know this video went a little long, but it was definitely worth it.